How are you feeling?
Strange.
It's going to take a little time. It always does.
She doesn't remember me.
Mommy will always love you.
Pretty.
Do you remember anything from our lives?
I know my name, Sarah Thompson. I have a family, a son, a degree in computer science.
You don't. Ellie?
Who are you?
I am your husband. You were involved in an accident. We need to slowly rebuild the connections to your real memories.
Mommy?
This is our daughter, Alice.
We miss you. Don't forget about me again, Mommy.
I want to remember, sweetie. What kind of stuff do we like to do together?
You have to start counting.
Hot or cold? What's happening to me?
Ellie, you're having a memory lapse.
That's not my name. Stop calling me that.
Go to your room and lock the door. Here's what it means to love someone. It's going to take a little time. It's going to take a little time. It's going to take a little time. Little time. It always does.
Bruce, I love you more than anything in the whole world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike. Joining me as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom?
Greetings and salutations, blobs of eyeballs. Yeah, if you don't understand my greeting, you will by the end of this episode. How the hell you doing, Mike? I'm doing all right.
I am doing well. We're coming off a holiday weekend, which I took an extra day of PTO today, so I've just been relaxing. Did you watch the World Cup game yesterday with a crowd, or were you at home?
Which one?
Mexico and England
Yes.
with a crowd.
I did indeed. It was it was very it was a sad day walking out of the movie theater.
Did you?
Because that was the second Mexico match I've watched at AMC, and after the first one, obviously it was a giant party. I mean, obviously everyone in the theaters for Mexico. There was an old lady selling tamales in the theater. It was pretty fucking amazing. But yeah, yesterday was pretty sad. Today was happy for me though, because I got to see my beloved Spanish team win at the movie theater. They scored in the 91st minute. And it was a 1-0 game. So yeah, very stressful day for me today. Not even counting the drama of my computer. But yeah, otherwise a very dramatic day.
Yeah, had Mexico won yesterday, I was anticipating like July 4th part 2 in the neighborhood, but there still ended up being some fireworks, but nothing like I was anticipating. I was watching that game, and I thought when Mexico went down 0-1, it was okay, but that second goal, it seemed like kind of mentally break them, like, because
yeah, exactly.
even if you're the better team or you're favored even slightly, I think going down 1 goal is manageable, but 2 makes it just tough in the game of soccer since it's not known.
Yeah,
for like
I mean, we've seen a 2-goal comeback recently. I think Senegal had a 2-goal lead on someone, and that team scored 3 goals in about 12 minutes at the end of the game. I forget who it was. Senegal was the loser. I forget who the winner was. But yeah, I mean, it's not impossible. I've seen enough football to see a lot of scores, a lot of goals scored during stoppage time. So yeah, stoppage time today for me with Spain was very stressful. So yeah, I walked out of the theater with a smile, but also with cold sweats.
Yeah, what made it crazier too was like up to the point where England scored their 2 goals, like Mexico had pretty much dominated possession, shots on goal, and then like as soon as England gets it to Mexico's goal, like the first time up to that point, like they put 2 in. It's just like was kind of crazy turn of events.
I think the Mexican team was very shocked at how well England was able to handle the elevation. I don't think anybody gave England any credit for being able to play at that elevation. They probably, most people figure, including myself, most people assumed England was going to gas out by the second half, but they absolutely did not. So, kudos to them. Whatever they did in the 2 days they had to prepare in the thin air of Mexico City apparently worked. So,
For sure.
congrats to England.
All right, that's our World Cup talk for this episode. Don, you're also here with us as always. How's it going?
Yeah, what's going on? Hopefully this time I'll be able to stay on the entire time.
That's right.
Yeah, if you remember last time I was here, I disappeared and never said anything. Well, apparently what happened is we had a complete and total what you call a power failure over here. No lights, no fans, no TV, no radio, no kitchen, no computer, no electricity. So everything was completely shut off and shut down. So yeah, that's where I was. I don't even remember what happened because it's been so long.
Damn, that's crazy. Was it like something blew in a fuse box for your house, or was it like a neighborhood thing?
Neighborhood thing, yeah. Everybody was out.
Oh
Yeah.
man. Yeah. That sucks. Especially because I know some neighborhoods are set up where like everything goes through electric. So if that goes down, it just takes out everything.
Yeah.
All right. Well, glad you're back. Hopefully nothing like that happens today and we'll get through this episode smooth. So we are covering VOD again. We do have theatrical coming up, which we'll get to that at the end of the episode for announcing the next one. But we went with Affection. This one's actually, I think, been out for maybe a month or so now. And I think it was like in discussion to talk or to do before when we were kind of going through our VOD period, but maybe we just always had something that was like new at the time. But we're getting to it now. So this one, Affection is what it's called, and IMDb says Ellie confronts a disturbing condition resetting her memory, unable to recognize her husband and daughter. Each reset disorients her, leaving haunting recollections of an unfamiliar life. So it almost sounds like the horror version of 50 First Dates, but it probably goes other places, being a horror movie and all. So we'll start with our general thoughts as always. So Venom, what did you think of Affection?
Overall, this was a very pleasant surprise. I actually walked away really enjoying this movie. I ended up watching it a second time since this was supposed to be, our episode last week, but unfortunately, I was unable to record last week because of medical issues in the family, but we are back this week to talk about it. And after watching it a second time, I actually have a few more gripes to talk about, but for the most part, I really enjoyed this one. I thought the performances were great. Small cast. We only have a cast of 3. Always great to see, what's her name? Jessica Roth, I believe. Tree from Happy Death Day. And as Don mentioned in one of our chats, it's always great to see Tree die over and over again, as she seems to be really good at it. So this is, one of those situations where, it's welcome to see, a familiar face from the genre. And then this story was just really, really well done. Like for the first entire act, you've got an idea of what's going on. And by the time you get to about halfway through the film and start getting more truthful information, you start to realize that this is a very original genre story. It kind of reminded me of Marshmallow from either earlier this year or from late last year. Not the exact same storyline, but just elements of the story definitely reminded me of Marshmallow. And I liked Marshmallow too. So it kind of makes sense. Yeah, great performances by our 3 characters. Maybe the child performance by our daughter character might have been, I don't know. It was weird at times, but at the same time, once you get the reveal of what's going on, maybe the way that she was acting makes a little bit more sense. I'd probably have to watch the movie again to really lock that down. But overall, like I said, really well done movie. Good, good gore for the one little bit of gore that we get in the movie. Not really a gore filled movie, not really a kill filled movie. But then this movie left me very emotionally confused, because once you do get the reveal of what's going on, the kill scenes are like I didn't know how to feel. And obviously I can't really get to it into it now in the spoiler free section, but yeah, it just, as we get more and more information, and as I start to realize who the three people in this movie are, the death scenes started to feel really, really odd. Like on the first watch, they were impactful the way they were intended to be. And even on the second watch, they were still impactful. Don't get me wrong. But it's like I said, once you get that reveal of what's actually going on, it leaves you scratching your head as to how I'm supposed to feel. Like, am I supposed to feel bad for these characters? Am I not supposed to care? Again, I'm sorry I'm being so ambiguous, but obviously we're in the spoiler free section of the show, so I don't want to give away too much. But yeah, overall, good performances, good cinematography, a serviceable score. Like the score was nothing really to write home about. Decent sound design, good set design. I mean, the movie is almost, I wouldn't go so far as to call it a chamber piece, because I mean, obviously the movie does take place at one location, but there is like a barn, a house, and then a couple of scenes out in the middle of the woods. So not a true chamber piece, but definitely an isolated location. So all of that worked for me. The ending was very satisfying, though it left me with a lot of questions. Like Mrs. Venom and I were watching it last night, and like I said, it just, I kept asking more and more questions, like, wait a minute, how can that be? Or wait a minute, or this doesn't make sense, and that doesn't make sense. And maybe it's just me, ultimately, maybe it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. But obviously, once we get into our spoiler filled section of the show, I'll be able to get my co-host thoughts on it and maybe clear up some of the confusion for myself. But I will say that overall, fun movie, short movie. It's like a minute lower than 90 minutes, I believe. I think it's like 89 minutes. So it's a quick watch. It gets right into it. If you're into performance driven horror, more character driven, I think this is a movie for you. Definitely not an action driven story or a gore driven story by any stretch of the imagination, but I think, especially if you enjoyed Marshmallow from, like I said, earlier this year or late last year, I can't remember exactly when it was released. I think you're going to get a lot of good out of this one as well. So I'll leave my general thoughts at that and say that this was a pleasant surprise. I was not expecting to enjoy this as much as I thought I would. And this might actually be a surprise top 10, at least for where we are in the year right now. I'm not sure if this will be, it might still be a top 10 candidate by the end of the year, but obviously there's some big name releases coming the rest of the year. So, we'll have to see. But yeah, overall enjoyed it and highly recommend it. So yeah, if you get a chance, check out Affection, and that'll do it for my general thoughts.
All right, let's kick it over to Dawn for your thoughts on Affection.
Yeah, I enjoyed this pretty much as well. I really like the setup. There's a little bit of intrigue going on about why they're being held there. The initial premise of, it's not much of a spoiler to say, but the idea of trying to regain her memory after an accident, and then, trying to bring everything together kind of starts snowballing. And then, these things start happening that don't quite make sense. But then as the story kind of plays out, you start getting multiple threads, multiple ideas, hinting at something far more mysterious going on than what we're initially led to believe. I really enjoy the first half to this much more than I think the second half. I think it kind of starts going off in weird directions that I think tonally and conceptually they're okay, but for some reason they're just not pulled off as well as they should. And I think that's something that Venom alluded to, where once we start realizing what's going on, the emotional stakes kind of get a little taken out of it, just because oh well, okay, well if this is going to happen, then I don't really need to be as emotionally invested in this as I normally would be, because we're just going to keep getting the same thing over and over again. And I know that's a little bit vague, but based on where we are in the film, I don't really want to give away too much. But the first act half acts a little bit more as a genuine immersive mystery that the second half doesn't play out as much as it should. And it kind of takes a lot of the suspense out of things. It takes a lot of the intrigue out of things. It kind of turns it into something more along akin to a cathartic you know revenge film. And it doesn't really come together as well as it thinks it does. I like where it's going conceptually, but it just doesn't play out as much in that regard as I wanted to, and that kind of takes a little bit of the sting out of things. But yeah, other than that, I don't have too much to complain about. I mean, it is a little bit more of a low budget effort. It does, you know, as he said, it's essentially three characters. Like, that's really all we have on here. It's the father, the mother, and the daughter. And two or three other people like show up as images and video chat histories, or voices on the phone or stuff like that. But yeah, other than that, we don't get anybody else. It's just the three of them. So yeah, it's not quite chamber piece, but it's more contained. I'd say it's more like contained horror. Maybe with like sci-fi leanings, but to say anything more than that would give the game away at this stage. So I'm not going to say that. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Maybe I would say, like, as of right now, maybe like at best a 9 or a 10 spot on like my best of year list. I expect this one to get dropped off pretty quickly and to sort of become an honorable mention, just not necessarily based on how much I liked it, but just based on my gut instinct of what I know is going to come out later this year. So yeah, it's still a watchable film. There's still a lot to like here. It's just one of those where I think it has a few slight issues that they're not big in terms of how like problematic or how flawed the film is, but it's more just it kind of just damages the film enough to kind of just drop it down slightly. So yeah, it's worth a watch, especially now that it's on VOD. It's definitely something you can invest your time in. 90 minutes, you're not gonna waste too much of your time. I mean, it's not like some of the other stuff we've covered where it's like an hour 45, hour 50, and it kind of plods along at the end. It's fairly fun. It's fairly fast paced. It's straightforward, to the point. But yeah, it's one of those where I wouldn't say it's a pressing watch, but it's definitely something that if you're interested in, I definitely say you could do much worse than this one. But yeah, it's just one where I don't quite know how much I can say about it at this time, just because I don't want to give too many spoilers for it. So I'll say back to you, Mike.
All right. So yeah, I liked Affection quite a bit. My only two real critiques, and one's not really one for me personally because I like sci-fi mixed with horror. I mean, I just like sci-fi, period. To me, this kind of feels like it could be like a dark Black Mirror episode. This obviously goes beyond the running time of most Black Mirror episodes, but because of the type of sci-fi that this is dealing with, actually on a couple fronts, this has sci-fi mixed in. But generally speaking, yeah, I was a fan of the story. I was a fan of kind of like the mystery, how it plays out. My major critique is kind of something that's already been touched on by you guys, is because we kind of get the reveal slash explanation of what's going on. I would say either right either right before the third act or somewhere in the second act, like right as we're transitioning into that, it kind of takes away maybe some of the impact of what happens in the third act, because that's where we get like a lot of the body horror stuff too, is when we do see some carnage going on. But I would have liked kind of like the mystery aspect and the clues still kind of be like slowly laid out. So during all this carnage, maybe we're still not absolutely sure what's going on, who's in the right, who's the reliable narrator. But because they chose in the way the story unfolds to kind of just lay all the cards on the table at a certain point, maybe that takes away some of the effectiveness, but or effectiveness of like kind of that final run in the movie. But overall, I still liked this. It was a nice VOD discovery. Again, I think this had like a small theatrical release window, and I just couldn't get to it because it was a case of like, oh, it's one showing at this night that's late at night, and I just couldn't get to it, unfortunately, because I would have been happy coming out of the theater with this. As far as it being on VOD, yeah, this is the kind of thing you kind of want to discover. It's unheralded. Not many people. I still don't think many people are talking about it or have talked about it, at least in our direct communities. But I think, by the end of the year, more people will have seen it once everyone starts scouring for like every 2026 release. As far as like a top 10 lister, I mean, I could, off the top of my head, if I think of everything, that we've watched, I could say right now it's like a fringe lister, but it's gonna have a difficult road to stay on there by the end of the year. But who knows? Because it's not like every year there aren't a ton of movies that we're highly anticipating and looking forward to that just don't amount to much, even if they're not bad. There could be movies that we're really expecting to be good and they just kind of end up like a middle of the road. So who knows? Either way, I mean, anytime a movie's good, whether it makes a list at the end of the year or not, it's still going to be a positive experience. And I was happy this one, and it felt like a different story from a lot of the stuff we're getting, and I did like kind of like the themes going on in this, the subtext there. Kind of reminded me a little bit of a movie that I saw earlier in the year on Shudder, but I'm not even going to mention it until we get to spoil. I probably don't even need to mention it, period, to be honest. But if it does come up, it's going to be in spoilers, not here. So with that said, yeah, I recommend it. Check it out. Don't let it fall through the cracks, people. If you're listening to this and you're looking for recommendations, give this one a shot. So those are my general thoughts for now. Back to you, Venom.
Man, I don't really have a lot more to add. I have a lot of questions to ask. Obviously, that third act kind of leaves you, a lot of it leaves you scratching your head, despite me being very satisfied with the ending from a petty standpoint. It definitely leaves you with a lot of questions. The future of our survivors and what exactly they're going to be able to do. So yeah, I say let's get into it, unless you guys have anything else you want to add that's spoiler free.
I can't think of much.
No, I mean, I did kind of like the score. That can be on spoiler free.
I mean, the score was okay. I didn't dislike it, but it never really, like, being the music guy that I
It's
am, I
not.
tend to. Uh,
I was gonna say it's not like a hugely memorable one. It's like your typical, I guess,
right.
lo-fi synth. In like these, a lot of these lower budget movies are doing that, where they just kind of come up with like a lo-fi, less complicated thing. It's nothing. It's like I wouldn't run out and be like, oh my god, I gotta add this to my playlist. It just I liked it for what it matched the movie. I guess it felt like compatible for the mood and the trajectory of the movie. That's it.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely didn't want to say anything negative about the score. It didn't really like shine through for me, I guess would be the main thing. When it comes to a lot of these synth heavy scores, I almost don't notice them unless they're exceptional. So I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just saying it wasn't exceptional. It wasn't ultra memorable, which Mike already said. Yeah. And by the way, none of us have mentioned that this is actually a directorial debut, not just a directorial debut, but a writing debut. Like, this is literally the first piece of content that this director, and sorry if I butcher the name, but it's the initials BT, and it's either Misa or Mesa. It's spelled Meza. So, Meza, Misa, depending on the nationality, obviously. If I knew the nationality of the director, I'd probably know better how to pronounce that name. But of course, I don't, as it is a directorial debut. And I got to say, I mean, for a writing and directorial debut, I mean, I think that this kind of elevates it a little bit more. It's definitely not something that, as we've all already said, it's not something that we've seen before. It's not necessarily something that that I was anticipating, especially after watching the first act. The first act seems very cut and dry. It seems like we have, a male antagonist with a couple of female protagonists that are being, held for one reason or another. Obviously, that evolves into something else as the movie goes along, which we'll talk about here shortly. So, again, great job, BT, for a directorial and a writing debut. I thought this was very well done. So, having said all that, I guess we'll go ahead and get into our spoiler section. I'll just give a brief kind of overview on where the story kind of starts, and then we'll start with our spoiler-filled conversation. Our movie opens up with Jessica Roth playing, what was the name of her character? Ellie. Ellie, we see that it seems like she's been in some kind of car accident. There's a car pulled over to the side of the road. She's on the concrete. It seems like she's unconscious, but then she comes to. There's blood coming from her mouth. Her eye is almost, I believe it was her right eye, is almost completely swollen shut. And she gets up to try to walk away, but then suddenly she has a mysterious convulsion, just, a random convulsion, which obviously I would imagine if somebody with epilepsy got into a major car accident, they may trigger a situation like that. So, I thought maybe that's what they were going towards. But then she stops with the convulsions, is able to get back up on her feet and start walking away. And then suddenly a pickup truck comes into the frame and runs her down. Literally, it looks like it absolutely killed her. Obviously, once we see that, we realize, no, she did not get into a car accident. Someone is trying to kill her for one reason or another. And then we get the next morning, or at least as it's kind of implied, maybe not the next day, because obviously our main character has no bruising on her or anything. But basically, she wakes up one morning and she doesn't recognize anything around her. She's looking around. She doesn't recognize the house. She notices that there's a man sleeping next to her that is not the person that she recognizes as her husband. So she kind of starts to freak out. The husband wakes up. They end up having a confrontation downstairs where she swings a fireplace poker at him. And then their daughter, Alice, comes into the picture, which kind of calms, Ellie down a little bit, because now she realizes that there's a child in the room and maybe I shouldn't attack this guy and kill him in his own house. At this point, we get the explanation from Bruce, the male character, the only male character in the movie, where he's trying to explain that Ellie has had a traumatic brain injury because of the car accident. And obviously, as you're watching this movie for the first time, you kind of remember the cold open with the car, with her getting run down, and think, oh, she must have survived and now has a traumatic brain injury. So basically, her memory has reset. She has no memory of anything in the house. She has no memory of the house. She has no memory of having a daughter, and she has no memory of being married to this particular gentleman. In fact, she claims that her name is Sarah Thompson, not Ellie, and that she has all these memories of a Sarah Thompson, like a different husband, and the fact that she had a son. So obviously, as we're watching this for the first time, you start to think, oh, this guy must be, maybe potentially kidnapping amnesia victims and trying to convince them that there's somebody else. It could be something along those lines, but obviously, we're going to let the movie keep going. And then we spend a lot of time with the couple where we see Bruce just trying to help Ellie remember. Now, a few minutes into the movie, well, more than a few minutes, but about 20 minutes into the movie, we start seeing these home videos all these home videos showing Bruce and Ellie and Alice together and happy. So that kind of, puts a kibosh on the original theory of him kidnapping women and trying to convince them they're his wife, because here's the video evidence of this woman who has been married to this guy. They had a daughter. They were obviously very happy at one point, blah, blah, blah. One day, while Alice is not Alice, excuse me, as Ellie, the mom, as she's in the shower, she realizes that she has some kind of hole on the back of her neck. Looks like it's just like a really nasty, like wasp sting or something like that. But obviously, the way that the score kind of the music that's playing in the score and the way that the camera slowly zooms into it, obviously there's some kind of nefarious reason for her having this hole on the back of her neck, but she just kind of doesn't worry about it and just keeps going along her day. We keep getting more scenes of these two together. He's playing more home videos. She's looking at pictures on the wall in the house. She doesn't remember her parents. Like, she sees a picture of her parents, of these two people that were supposedly her parents, but they both passed away, so they're gone. And it's basically just this woman trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Well, at this point, I'm going to fast forward a lot and just get into our reveal. As it is discovered, Ellie and Alice are not human. It turns out that they are artificial beings created by Bruce as replacements for his real wife and daughter that passed away, before the events of this movie started. How long has he been doing this? Well, we'll find out here in a little bit. But yeah, we find out that this is not the real Ellie. This is not the real Alice. And that this guy has basically been creating clones. And what he's been doing is he's been trying to find Ellie's consciousness in a database of consciousness. Literally, in the world of this film, there is a database where people can upload their consciousness and make almost like a digital DNA copy of themselves. I mean, you could talk about a soul, or you could talk, that it's just like a personality or whatever the case may be. Obviously, if you start talking about soul, then you're getting into kind of religious aspects of this thing, which I don't think the movie purposely does, but I can see how some viewers might go that route. Eventually, Bruce ends up one day getting frustrated with Ellie and the fact that she's not making any progress with her, with regaining her memory, and literally attacks her, literally starts strangling her right on the coffee table, or the kitchen table, excuse me. And basically just screaming at her, do you remember anything? Do you remember anything? And as he's basically choking the life out of Ellie, Alice ends up walking into the room. And because of interactions that we've had between Ellie and Alice in the movie before this scene, Alice thinks that, mommy has a monster in her, because that's kind of how it was explained to her, child mind earlier in the film. Bruce tells Ellie to leave, and he continues, trying to attack Ellie. Ellie eventually is able to kind of get out of it, and she runs away from Bruce after stabbing him in the chest with a broken pencil. Or actually, the pencil was broken after she stabbed him with it. She stabbed him and then broke the pencil off in his chest, which unfortunately, she didn't stab him on the heart side, on the left side of the chest. So it basically was just kind of a flesh wound for him. But as she escapes, Bruce's clutches, she ends up finding the lab. And basically, they're on this property, which is obviously very isolated. Like, once we find out what's going on here, you have to understand that there's no way that these three have any kind of interaction with other people in this world. Like, they are so completely isolated from the world, and it is because of their situation, which we'll get to here in a little bit. Gentlemen, please don't be scared to stop me if there's anything that you want to chime in on, because I know there's a lot of scenes in here that might leave people scratching their heads, including myself. But anyway, Ellie ends up finding the lab. While she's in the lab, she finds a video that says "Play Me" on it. So she thinks, oh, this was left here for me. She pops the tape in, and it's Bruce. And what the video is, it's an introduction to a new copy. Yes, this is where we get the reveal that even Bruce isn't human. No one is human in this movie. Our three characters, all three of them, are basically these, I guess we can call them replicants, if you will, empty husks that had a consciousness grabbed from this database and inserted into these bodies, or into these pods, which, we'll get into the pods here in a little bit. But like I said, the problem with this whole thing is that Bruce doesn't know specifically where Ellie's consciousness file lies in this database. So he is literally just grabbing random female consciousness files from this database and putting them into these clones, hoping that one day he'll end up finding the right Ellie. Hence why when Ellie wakes up earlier in the film, she has no recollection of anything that's going on. And she even says, I'm Sarah Thompson. I know I'm Sarah Thompson. I have all these memories. I grew up in Maine. I'm married to a different man. I have a son, things like that. So obviously Bruce has been just grasping at straws, blindly grabbing any female consciousness file that he can find and putting it into these clones. Now, how many times has he done this? My friends, are the Ellie that we have been following in this movie is number 163. Yes, she is the 163rd iteration of an Ellie clone that he has been trying. So literally 163 attempts. He still hasn't found the right consciousness file to put into the replicant so that he could have his wife back. And like I said, unfortunately, they don't really show us on the computer how many times he's done this with Alice, the daughter, because it seems like Alice, right when she wakes up, knows who she is. So it seems like he was successful in finding the correct Alice consciousness, but he's still trying to find the Ellie consciousness. Because when Alice wakes up, she is totally aware of where she is, of who Bruce is, even her teddy bear, Mr. Bunny. She knows that it has a button on its hand, and we literally see her wake up and instantly activate Mr. Bunny to play the music that calms her. But like I said, at one point, Bruce, and then I forgot to mention that Bruce's file is up to number 32. We're not even close to the original Bruce. This is the 32nd iteration of Bruce. Why did the original Bruce decide to clone himself? No fucking clue. The movie does not give us any kind of ideas other than maybe grief. Maybe he just couldn't handle the grief of losing his wife and daughter. So he figured, I've got the technology to reproduce them. Fuck it. I'll reproduce myself and let them try to figure out, which, like I said, it just left me with so many questions. Like, how, after 32 attempts at copying Bruce, does this clone still even give a shit about, finding Ellie and Alice? Like, after a while, you would think that it would realize that, oh, I'm not human, I'm a clone, I can do whatever the fuck I want. Why am I going to do what the original Bruce is forcing me to do? But for whatever it's worth, in the film, yes, the Bruce clones basically continue the work of the previous Bruce clone. And every time Bruce clones himself, he uploads a new consciousness file, because obviously every version of Bruce gets new information, new mistakes that they made that they can avoid in future iterations of Ellie. But like I said, just why these clones are so fixated on trying to get the clone of a guy who, the clone of the wife of a man who doesn't exist anymore is beyond me. So, the movie isn't perfect. Like I said, during my general thoughts, there are issues with the movie, maybe less so for some viewers than others, but definitely after second watch, I'm just like, what is going on? But, we'll get to my questions here in a little bit. So, while Ellie is in the lab, Bruce unfortunately does find her, and he ends up killing her. He basically beats her unmercifully with a metal pipe, and that is the end of Ellie number 163. he drags her body out to the cornfield that he lives next to. I mean, basically his whole property is surrounded by cornfields, which is probably part of the reason why they're so isolated from the world. But yeah, he buries he buries Ellie number 163, and then the only thing I could figure is that to spare Alice the pain of losing her mother again, he then goes and he suffocates little Alice. So basically, it seems like every time he has to create a new Ellie, he also creates a new Alice, just so that they wake up together. And I guess, there's no like separation anxiety, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. Or maybe it's something that I'm completely missing, which is, I'm open to. I'm always open to being wrong about the movies I watch. But anyway, what ends up happening is Ellie number 163 does not die. She ends up digging her way out of the grave. And I made a joke that at this point, this is where the movie turns into a zombie movie. I know it's not really a zombie because it's literally a replicant. So it was never alive to begin with, quote unquote, alive. It's somehow still moving. Earlier in the movie, they mention how these replicants heal quicker than normal humans. So, obviously Bruce number 32 didn't do enough to kill Ellie number 163. So have I confused everybody enough? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, at this point,
it definitely can be a little confusing on a first watch, because I've seen it a couple times now, especially because the first time I think I watched it before we had even considered it for fresh cuts. It was just something new available, and I was like, oh, okay, it's a 2026. And that's why I'm glad I did rewatch it, because once we kind of get the reveal, and then it starts becoming like layer after layer of like, okay, so this is a clone, but a consciousness uploaded. Okay, this one's glitching out. Okay, this one is killing for revenge. Okay, this one, it is a lot on a first time watch.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, after Bruce dispatches of Ellie and Alice number 163, he goes ahead, and then we see the actual process of how he's creating these replicants. And this harkens back to my greeting at the beginning of the episode. What we see are these pulsating globules of eyeballs. It literally looks like just a bag of pus and eyeballs, and random muscle tissue, and it's like pulsating. And the eyeballs are actually looking at you as the camera, approaches the bag. I can't do it any justice by describing it. I mean, you'd have to see it for yourself. It's almost Lovecraftian in nature. Like there actually are elder gods that have like 1,000 eyes, and this blob reminded me of that. So basically, he takes two of these blobs of eyeballs, puts them on these two different platforms that he has set up, and then he starts up the computer, and then the machine, and this is all figurative because I don't know specifically what's happening, but I guess somehow the machine is cooking up these globules. They start to split, like we actually get to see mitosis, like where they start to split and actually become bigger. So like the blob gets more and more humanoid as it goes along. Eventually an alarm clock rings, and letting Bruce know that the replicants are ready. And then we see him actually go up to them and, open them up. But unbeknownst to Bruce, with Ellie number 163 getting out of her shallow grave and finding her way back to the lab, what we see is Ellie number 163 uploads her consciousness as an extra file to the next Ellie 164, the next one that's about to be made, which I thought was fucking brilliant, because now what you have is an Ellie, or a quote unquote Ellie, because we still don't know if he actually found the right consciousness, but it also has all the memories of 163. So all the attacks, her watching all the videos, number 165 now has all of these memories automatically in her head. So when Bruce takes 165 up to the bed and then turns it on, he activates it almost like Frankenstein would be activated, like bolts on the neck, like an electronic charge to the neck. It almost looks very Frankensteinish. He ends up, waking up Alice, the new Alice, and waking up the new Ellie. But this time, instead of Ellie not knowing where she is and going, flying off the handle, she just kind of wakes up, looks around, and I think, like I said, her consciousness, she realizes what's going on because of what 163 did, the file that 163 uploaded. And she literally wakes up, pretends that she's Ellie just to appease Bruce. They end up having sex, very boring sex, in my opinion, but yeah, they end up having sex. And Bruce starts to realize that, oh, I think I did it. I finally did it. I think this is my Ellie. But after the whole sex situation and Bruce leaves the bed, we see Ellie get up, get dressed, grab a tank of pesticide that we see Bruce using in the cornfield throughout the movie. And she takes the family truck and drives to the lab, to the barn. The barn is still on the property, but it's separated a little bit. So she ends up driving to the barn. And when she gets to the lab, Bruce is nowhere to be found. So she starts spraying the pesticide all over. Well, don't forget, at this point, Bruce has a pencil sticking out of his chest after 164 stabbed him in the chest with it. Right? Or was it 163? Actually, no, it might have been 163 that stabbed him, and he's just hiding it from 164. But anyway, she drives to the lab. Bruce is not there. She starts spraying the entire lab with the pesticide like she's going to light it up. Unfortunately, as she's spraying the pesticides, she finds more videos and she starts watching those. And these videos are of Bruce's early attempts at trying to, bring Ellie back. So we see another, Jessica Roth character, another Ellie, and this one is being much more combative with Bruce, basically saying, no, I'm not your wife. That is not my daughter. Stop trying to convince me that it is. So this woman was, very, very self-assured, and she knew that, this guy was full of shit. And then the video kind of glitches out. And when it comes back, that version of Ellie is now lying dead on the floor right in front of the camera with Bruce kind of standing behind her. So this is just giving more context to Ellie 164 as to what she needs to do. So like I said, she continues spraying the lab with the pesticide. And just as she pulls out a book of matches to light the place up, of course, Bruce shows up with his little activation device and he deactivates Ellie number 164. She ends up falling to the floor. And by the way, at this point, Bruce does know what happened. He actually does go back to the computer. He sees that the file for 164 has been updated in a way that he didn't do. And instantly he realizes, oh shit, this Ellie that just woke up knows everything that the last Ellie knows. So he's obviously, very worried about his own safety. But like I said, he catches up to her at the lab. He deactivates her literally just as she's about to strike a match to light the whole place up. He deactivates her. She falls to the floor. And then, basically it's rinse and repeat from here. He takes this one, or he starts to set up Ellie 165 now. He removes the file that 163 uploaded. He removes that file, creates file number 165, and then leaves another blob of eyeballs on the machine, kind of cooking, if you will, while he goes to dispatch of Ellie 164. While taking Ellie 164 out, and like I said, some of these scenes with 163 kind of going back to the house and walking through the cornfield, like that's straight zombie movie to me. I know she's not a zombie, but the way that she's walking, the noises that she's making, like one side of her mouth is missing from, remember Bruce killed her with a steel pipe and basically just bashed her face in with it over and over. So we kind of see how her right cheek is completely missing. So she's making this cool kind of clicking sound as she's trying to breathe through her very fucked up mouth. And in my opinion, that was straight zombie in my opinion. But again, whatever. So back to once again the cornfield where Bruce is in the process of burying 164. While he's doing that, 163 in her zombie form starts to approach. And then just as he's about to make the fatal blow to Ellie 164, 163 shows up behind him and drags him into the shallow grave that he just dug up. We get one last gasp of the villain jumping up and grabbing 164 by the leg, but then she takes the pesticides, which are still connected to her back. In Bruce's infinite wisdom, after he knocked out 164, he left the fucking pesticide tank on her to go bury her. I mean, was he actually going to bury the tank of pesticide with her? I don't know. Again, more questions, but whatever. So like I said, when 163 shows up and attacks Bruce, 164 then takes the pesticide, sprays both Bruce and 163 with pesticides, and then is able to light up both of them. They both go up in, a blaze of glory. Not as visceral as I was hoping. Again, I've said this before and I've said this again as an old school horror fan. When you give me a despicable piece of shit like this as the antagonist of a horror movie, I want to see his comeuppance. I want to see that fucker's flesh burn. Hell, I want to see what it looks like when a blob of eyeballs goes up in flames. We don't even get the satisfaction of that. But at least it is very satisfying that, yes, Bruce is dead. And now Ellie and Alice, Ellie 164 and this new Alice are now both safe. They decide to take the truck and just leave, mind you, without setting the lab on fire, which kind of bothered me. I mean, with all the information that 164 has in her head, I'm actually very surprised. She probably figured that with Bruce dead, there's probably no more chance of another replicant getting made, but I still would have, at least, finished the job, if you will, and, given myself some peace of mind to know that no one's ever going to find that lab, no one's ever going to find his notes, and no one's ever going to try to reproduce this again. Because hell, we don't even know how many pods are in that lab. There could be a whole closet full of pods in there that are just sitting there waiting for DNA so that they can, become human again. So after Ellie 164 and Alice drive away, obviously Bruce and Ellie 163 are burning in the shallow grave. We then see Ellie 165 finish. We hear the alarm that we've heard a couple of times throughout the film. Unfortunately, there's no one there to help her rip her way out of her, kind of placenta sac, if you will. And, we get this scene of her struggling to get out. Eventually, she is able to get out, all covered in red mucus, some nasty shit. She ends up walking out of the barn, out of the lab. And as soon as she sees daylight and she sees her house, she literally says one word. She just says Bruce. And then the movie ends, which, like I said, this is a very, very satisfying ending because this piece of shit was literally one iteration away from actually finding his real wife. And now he's dead as shit. So he doesn't even get to enjoy it. So haha. But like I said, this left me with so many questions because you've got these blobs of eyeballs going out into the world. And Alice doesn't even know that she's a blob of eyeballs. She literally thinks that she's just a normal little kid. Like, do these things bleed like normal? Do they? Well, I mean, I guess they still do bleed since we saw 163 get bashed in the head. But like, the first time that they go to a doctor and get an x-ray, is the x-ray going to look normal or is it going to look like a bunch of eyeballs inside of her body? Like, it just left me with a lot of questions on second watch. And then also the fact that there's now two blobs of eyeballs that look completely identical. you've got two Jessica Roth blobs running around this world. What happens if they meet each other? You know what I mean? So, like I said, it kind of left me with a lot of questions, especially the one that I asked earlier about how all of these Bruce replicants still care enough to continue his work. Like I said, this is Bruce number 32. So it's like, why? I understand that, you know, they watch the videos and he sees how happy they were when they were all still alive. But, you know, I go back to Dr. Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park, chaos theory. Eventually, one of those Bruces is going to do something different. You know, he's either going to decide not to watch one of the videos one day, or he's going to decide to just stop Bruce's work, whatever the case may be. I'm very shocked that 32 iterations of Bruce are still this dedicated to bringing back a wife that, like I said, isn't really your wife. It's a blob with your wife's consciousness in it. It's not the same thing. So like I said, the movie, I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. I love the themes, you know, that are kind of explored in the movie, kind, you know, the themes of identity and autonomy and things like that. But and then the other thing that I wanted to mention is how I felt so confused about the kill scenes in this movie. It's like when we actually see Bruce kill Ellie 163, it's like, well, that's one blob killing another blob that he created. So am I supposed to feel bad for the first blob? Like, I literally, it leaves you scratching your head. Admittedly, the first time that I saw Bruce smother little Alice, that's an impactful scene regardless. It doesn't matter about the confusion on whether they're human or, you know, their human rights, you know, things like that. It's still very, and even on the second watch, it was still impactful. It just kind of, like I said, it left me scratching my head as to how am I supposed to feel? Like, I didn't know how I was supposed to feel. Am I supposed to feel bad for 163? I mean, she may not be a person, but she is still an entity, a free thinking entity that can go on and live on their own and potentially do good things for society. So yeah, like I said, the movie leaves you kind of wondering what's going to happen with these blobs now that they're all free to go out in the world. On top of the fact that the last blob, you know, Ellie number 165, like, does she stay at the house? Because since she has her actual memories, you know, she's probably going to remember this house. She's going to remember the memories that she had here. Eventually, she's going to find that shallow grave with like two bodies all charred up inside, you know, blah, blah, blah. I would love to have seen like maybe 10-15 more minutes of this movie just to see what happens with these blobs. Like, give me a 10 years later scene or something. But overall, still very satisfying. I'm still happy with the film. Great performances, good story. Like I said, maybe just a couple of plot elements here and there that might leave you scratching your head, but otherwise, a solid film, well worth watching. Like I said, if you're a fan of performance-driven horror, that kind of delves into sci-fi, and not just a little bit. Like, this movie doesn't just it doesn't just dip its big toe into sci-fi. It takes a full-on dive into sci-fi in the second act. And I'm not necessarily complaining about that, even though I am not the biggest sci-fi fan. It still totally worked for me. Bruce is still a piece of shit, whether he's the real Bruce or Bruce number 32. He's still a very hateable antagonist. So the movie worked for me, and that's about all I have. So back to you, Mike.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I thought the ending was maybe Ellie, like the actual Ellie consciousness successfully uploaded to that body, and then it's
65.
Yeah, and it's like it finally worked, but there's nothing for her to return to.
Exactly. Like, she's gonna wait. She woke up with all her memories of her husband and daughter still alive, but she's gonna, you know, once she like goes back in the house and washes up, she's gonna realize, where is everybody? Why am I alone here? And then God forbid she, well, I mean, she doesn't even have a vehicle because Ellie 164 took the truck. So she doesn't even have a way to get like into town. So, I mean, she's probably stuck on this property for a very long time. And then
I've
I
also
also
heard.
thought, man, these three people have to be so isolated, because if they ever got a visit from an actual human, I feel like the whole thing would fall apart. Almost like they wouldn't know how to interact with an actual human. It's been so long. I don't know. It's just one of the weird thoughts that were kind of floating around my head after watching this movie. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've also heard the interpretation that the end is like Ellie is the dominant consciousness in there, but because of we see her with like the tear, it's kind of subtle, but she has like a tear that the original, like the Sarah's kind of like buried deep in there, almost like a Nikki situation from Obsession, where
Sure.
the dark Nikki is the prevalent personality, but the actual one is still in there, just buried deep inside with like no ability to do. It's almost like you're witnessing internally living out someone else's life. So
I mean, I guess you could
it's
see. I
open to
mean, I guess you could say
interpretation, I
that with
guess.
yeah, you could say that with 165, but like I said, with 163 and 64, since they have no memory of who this Ellie person is, they're trying, Bruce is trying to convince them that they are Ellie, but they know they're not. Especially 163. I mean, she even says, "I am Sarah Thompson. I have all these memories. I know who I am." I'm actually kind of surprised that Bruce still continued to try to indoctrinate her into believing that she was Ellie. Like, once she says, "I'm Sarah Thompson," that's it. This iteration failed. Just stop and go to the next one. But he still decides to try to power through and try to get her to remember things. But it's like, it doesn't make any sense that he would let her. Once you get to the end of the movie, at least to me, it didn't make any sense that once she makes the claim that she's Sarah Thompson, that's it. You're never going to convince her that she's Ellie. So just end it and go on to the next round, if you will. I don't know. Ultimately, I enjoyed the movie. I did. I don't have any major issues with it. A couple of plot holes here and there, and a lot of questions about what happens after the events of the movie, as we now have multiple Ellies and an Alice who doesn't even know that she's a blob of eyeballs, things like that. So, yeah, that's it. No major complaints ultimately.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for affection. And what's coming up next? I'm sure Evil Dead Burn, right?
Oh yeah, I've got a lot of people waiting. Almost, it's funny because my coworkers aren't really horror people, but they're mostly excited for Evil Dead. Like, Evil Dead is one of those franchises that kind of transcends horror fans. Obviously, Bruce Campbell's a big part of that, but to see all of these, because ultimately I work with almost 100% Mexicans. I work in a Mexican neighborhood, and all 99% of my coworkers are Mexican, and they're not normally horror fans, but the fact that most of them are excited for Evil Dead Burn, actually, it does this old man's heart good. So I'm happy.
Yep, we shall see. The last trailer for it I saw looked pretty cool, so that's something.
I've yet to watch one. With Evil Dead Rise, I had accidentally seen a trailer while I was at the theater watching a different movie, but I've actually been good. I have not seen shit about the new Evil Dead. So yeah, I'll be going in completely blind, and I'm happy about that.
Okay. So I guess I mean, we already announced what we're doing next, but it shouldn't have been a surprise anyway. But before we get out of here, do you have anything new, Venom?
Nothing new since the last time we recorded. Creature Comforts episode 51, where we looked at the original Rodan for Kai Jun, is still our latest episode. We will be going into the ocean for episode 52 with Deep Rising. That episode should be recorded later this week, so hopefully that'll be out in the next couple of weeks, well before the end of July. And I think that's pretty much it. I'll let Mike talk about the main show because I know we got plans for that one as well. And that's pretty much it for me.
All right. What about you, Dawn?
Yeah, not much. Creature comforts. Looking forward to the new episode, and yeah, the only other thing was we managed to record a special roundtable that I've done several times in the past for Paranormal is the New Normal. This last one that we decided to do natural horror movies. So only creatures that are based on actual animals. So bears, fish, sharks, crocodiles. I think we had a killer cat movie in there too, but I don't remember. It's been a few weeks now. It was recorded before we did the show that I got bumped off of, so I don't remember offhand what the films were because we've already started working on our next one, which should be within the next couple of months since everyone agreed it was pretty easy to do. But I'll leave that one for when it comes. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much it for me.
Okay. For me, let's see. I it's been a couple of weeks because Cinema Beef took last week off. I believe the last episode we did was the volume 2 of Steve Zahn Needs Better Friends, and it was Reality Bites and Suburbia, the 90s movies for those. Um so that's that. I know coming up this week it's back. We're recording Manitou, I think, and
Yeah.
Dark Half. Yeah, that's going on there. And then the main show we should be recording Sunday, this whatever this Sunday is. And I don't even remember Derek's picks, but they're Derek's picks. They're in the chat. I know where to find them when I need to watch them, but
We're looking at World War II horror with Below and The
Below,
Devil's
yeah.
Rock.
There you go. As soon as you said, I'm like, oh yeah, duh. And then beyond that, yeah, Evil Dead Burn is next, and there might be another one or two in July for the theater, but we have a full slate of stuff coming up. So stick around. We got plenty of stuff on the way for the No More Room in Hell podcast umbrella of shows. So that said, thanks everyone for listening. We will be back in a week with the next one. Let's say bye to the listeners.
Later.
Take care of your replicants. Don't let them get out of the barn.
Peace.